So on behalf of Mass EC and communities that may be considering running a Heat Smart or Solarize campaign in the future, I want to thank you both for participating today in this interview. Our goal today is to capture your experience and the knowledge you gained from running your campaign so that it can be passed on to other communities in Massachusetts. And for our viewers today that may be less familiar with Solarize and Heat Smart, these programs seek to increase the adoption of small-scale solar electricity and clean heating and cooling technologies in participating communities. Through grassroots educational campaigns that are mainly driven by local volunteers, these community-led campaigns really help simplify the process of installing clean energy systems by pre-vetting an installer and offering transparent pricing for the homeowners. So I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Charlotte Fall, and I'm the Community Clean Energy Fellow at Mass CEC, helping to develop the Solarize and Heat Smart Toolkit. I'm joined today by Jillian Wilson-Martin and Jay Turner, who are the municipal representative and solar coach for Natick. So let's get started. Could you both quickly introduce yourself and briefly explain your role and responsibilities in Natick's Solarize campaign?
Sure. So Jillian Wilson-Martin, I'm the sustainability coordinator for the town of Natick. And in that capacity for the Solarize campaign, I was responsible for coordinating with our procurement officer to manage the RFP, and also coordinating with other kind of key town decision makers like our town administrator and Board of Selectmen, now Select Board, on getting things approved as necessary for the campaign to operate. And then I did play a big supporting role to the volunteer team in supporting communications for the program, because I did already have a pretty substantial database of resident emails who were interested in solar. And so we were able to capitalize on that and use that base as kind of an initial target list of people who might be interested.
Yeah, I'm Jay Turner, and I am a Natick resident, and got excited about the Solarize campaign when I'd heard that it was running in other communities, and asked Jillian, why haven't we done Solarize? And she said, well, maybe we should, and why don't you get involved kind of making that happen? So I wound up working closely with Jillian and a few other people who were core to the Solarize team to kind of launch the community aspect of this with a whole bunch of volunteers from the town of Natick. And then my day job is I'm a professor in environmental studies at Wellesley College. So I also involve some students from the college in supporting the program as well. And so, we did, working with Jillian, a lot of work around outreach in the community, education, hosting the different events that the Solarize campaign put on, and supporting residents as they decided to go solar.
Now, can you tell me just which technologies you chose to promote, and how did you choose specifically those technologies?
So our program was a solar-only program. In terms of how we promoted them, we did a lot of different things. We had a great website that Jay's team built. We ran a series, really quite a few solar open houses, really leveraging those residents who already had solar on their homes. They were really more than happy to share their success stories with solar. And we had like coffee and, pastries available. And we would have signs around town alerting people, yard signs about an open house. And we did a lot of promotion. And those events were really well attended. We had our big Meet the Installer meeting, which I think we had something like 90 people join, which we were really excited about. We advertised almost everything we did with yard signs throughout the town. So we had yard signs advertising the Meet the Installer, and then we had yard signs at the end of the campaign kind of as a last push, like, the sun is setting on the Solarize program. It was a great yard sign that we had made. And we had yard signs in the lawns of people who had contracted and signed up. And we did some other fun things. Jay's team had identified homes that had high solar potential, and we used the Google Project Sunroof for that, or at least as a support for that. And we did these door hangers on homes, and those were really fun to do. And we actually we tracked on our website visits to the website, and we would see really big spikes on the days that we did these flyers on the doors.
Okay, now I'm going to get a little bit more into how you guys ran your installer selection process. So Your team decided to facilitate their own installer selection process independent of Mass CEC. Can you tell us why your team preferred to do this process on their own?
We were the first year that Mass CEC didn't select an installer for everyone, as I understand it. And I don't know if we were the only year that happened, but Mass CEC provided us with some template procurement documents and provided us with a technical consultant to help us review the responses in terms of the technology mostly. But otherwise, we were kind of on our own.
And could you explain a little bit about how that process ran on your own, and if you enjoyed the process, felt confident in the installers that you selected on your own?
It did work, and we did get a lot of interest. Like, I don't remember, Jay, how many proposals we got, but we got a lot. And having that technical consultant was, I think, really valuable for us because it wasn't all about the price on the panel. There was a lot of different factors we looked at. We had a review committee that included Jay, myself, and a couple members of our volunteer team that were maybe more savvy on the technical side, plus the technical consultant. And a big piece of our evaluation process actually came down to the capacity of the installer from both a sales and installation perspective, and also the investment that they were planning on putting into community outreach. I think something that surprised us was how much installers were willing to contribute to the community outreach piece themselves. I didn't know that we would expect such proposals going into it. I think some of them proposed spending almost like $20,000 on community outreach materials and things like that, just on the installer side. So from that perspective, we learned a lot, but it was still a little daunting to go through that process. But it wasn't so daunting in that Natick is actually planning on participating in a Solarize plus solar plus clean heat program with a few other communities, and we're doing that RFP in conjunction with them without Mass CEC. So it is doable and not something to be afraid of, I think.
That's great. Could you specifically name how the municipality of Natick was able to support you during that process?
It was run through the town's procurement process. The town's procurement officer, ensured that we were, following proper procedure, and essentially made sure that the gears were oiled and running smoothly, which made it much easier for us to focus on the process of, making a decision.
What final suggestions or tips would you have for communities looking to run a Solarize campaign on their own, which again, that means that they don't have any funding or direct support from Mass CEC?
Having the support from Mass CEC was valuable in that we learned a lot about the process, but the actual financial commitment from the Mass CEC was relatively modest compared to what the installer brought to the table. So I think kind of in the big picture, the fact that there's this template for Solarize that's out there, that I think you have installers that are interested in working with towns that want to pursue this model. And then there, when we launched this campaign in Natick, we had a lot of people who turned out who were interested in taking part. I think those are the things that really made it fly, more so than that seed money from Mass CEC. So I think there's lots of good reasons that towns excited about doing this to go ahead and proceed and expect that it could be really successful.
I would just say to not be afraid of trying it on your own. Having the municipality's blessing in a way or involvement, I think really helps put residents at ease. Having that kind of pre-vetting work done, because I think it's a very big investment for residents. And I know a lot of residents who wanted to go solar, but they also don't want to do something foolish and they feel a little bit out of their comfort zone. So having those coaches and potentially a team of coaches available to really support them in analyzing the technical details, I think goes a long way.
That's great. Thank you both so much for participating today. Is there any final words of wisdom that you'd like to pass on?
I would just say that I think there's a interest among lots of communities to kind of keep these lines of programs open, so they're not always just short campaigns. So we're working in our region right now with other communities who are interested in creating kind of an ongoing program where residents have access to kind of pre-vetted installers. And I think that the more we can collaborate across political boundaries, the better. So if you're a community who's interested in this kind of program, there's so many of us out there who have done it before and maybe working on our own next versions of it. So reach out, and the community is very collaborative, so it'd be great to connect.
Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate it, and it was lovely to meet you both.